This is Dennis Raimondi with the Coffee League, found at thecoffeeleague.com. My guest today, Sum Ngai. She is the owner and founder of the Coffee Project, a wonderful cafe at 239 East 5th Street in New York City. And we're going to talk about that cafe and her work in the industry today. And I want to say, as many know, that I spend a lot of time visiting cafes. And every once in a while, a place really strikes me. And in New York, there's a ton of great specialty cafes, specialty coffee cafes. But I felt Sum's place was quite unique, and I really enjoyed it. I think I went there twice in a few days that I was in New York last. So, Sum, thank you so very much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thanks, Dennis.
So,
Thank you. Thanks. Hi, everyone.
yeah, hello. And then tell us how you got into the coffee business. Is it something that you've been at a long time, and what brought you into coffee?
It has been a long time, actually. So I'm originally from Malaysia,
Hmm.
and my family does coffee, but it's very different from what I'm doing here right now in the United States. So, so having the exposure to coffee since young gives me the idea of like, hey, coffee tastes really delicious. So back home, I actually started drinking coffee when I was 5. And
Hmm.
then growing up knowing about coffee. But when I first get to know about specialty coffee, it's when I first come to Portland in Oregon. So it's so different. Like I have never had espresso on its own without sugar or milk, and it scares me because back home it's so bitter and so strong. But when I got there and I had my first shot, I realized that this is totally different. It changed my life. So
Wow.
I started doing a lot of coffee back in home, like at home, do home brewing, and I read a little bit more, do some really geeky stuff about coffee. But it was not till 2015 when I started going to Coffee Expo and then met a lot of people who has been in the industry for about maybe 20 years. They are like, hey, you know what? You're quite talented. Have you ever like considered taking coffee seriously, like as a profession? That's when I got introduced to the field of specialty coffee, go to a barista school, and learn how to run coffee business, and eventually get myself into starting Coffee Project.
Where did you go to barista school?
It's actually in Portland, Oregon as well. And it is actually around 5 days where you get to
Hmm.
learn everything about how to run coffee business. But the real drill is actually going to coffee shops from all the networks that I learned or I met throughout the years when I'm interested in specialty coffee. And they teach you so much, like how to dial in a good espresso, how to frost a proper milk, what's a good temperature. And we go to a lot of different coffee shops just to drink and see like, oh, so this is how it's being pulled this way. Oh, so this is the region of coffee that you have to brew this way. So these are the little tiny things that we picked up
Right. This
throughout
is
my journey.
this is fascinating because a lot of people know that I write and I'm a broadcast journalist and cover coffee and have a real passion for coffee. So they'll often ask me, "Hey, I'm thinking of opening a cafe. What do you think?" Well, I love coffee and I'm covering it, but I've never opened a
Mhm.
cafe. So these are the kinds of things somebody yourself like yourself who went into the business, wasn't born in it. But just made a decision to go in where you start. So for you, and I had a guest on recently, Amy Tart from Florida. The I think it's the Lady and the Mug is her cafe. She also went to, and she runs a great place as well. And she also went to coffee school in Portland. Portland, of
Nice.
course, in the United States, being a great center of coffee culture and new wave, third wave coffee. It's where Stumptown started. So you finished this program of study in Portland. Then what got you to New York City? Where did you go from there?
Oh, straight to New York. So my partner is actually a full-time employee in New York City. So we settled down here, and then from there I was like, hey, you know what? Maybe you can actually start this coffee shop together with me, since you want to do something together. And coffee is the one thing that we both agree on in a lot of ways.
Uh-huh.
So we just decided to quit both our full-time jobs and go straight into starting a coffee
Did,
business.
did they also study coffee, or did you teach them?
It is just me. So I trained Kalina, and now she could actually do a lot of things on her own.
Great. So you both have expertise not only in business but in coffee. And then what is some of the advice you would give to people out there starting a cafe? And I must say, in New York City, it's got to be
Mhm.
extra challenging because the cost to rent retail space in New York City, like San Francisco and a few other cities, is very cost prohibitive. It must be very challenging.
In fact, since you mentioned, it is actually a lot harder than a lot of places that I know. So back to Portland, when we were like looking at how to start a coffee shop, I realized that starting like what I picked up from Portland is so different from when I first getting rolled into in New York City. The permits are different, like you say, the real estate is different, and people are looking for different things. So we just have to be prepared to encounter all the different things that might just happen. Like if it's not what you plan, just just take it with open mind and get done. So there's no time to just sit and think about, oh, I thought this is going to be the other way around, but now something happened. What should I do? You have to solve it right away because every single day you miss is literally pouring water down
Right,
the drain.
right, right. So you have to go at it hard and fast. And when you went to New York and opened there, you had been in Portland, and obviously in Portland the coffee culture is been around longer for any of the other cities in the United States, Portland, Seattle, the Northwest, that area. When you came to New York, were the customers at that time as sophisticated, as knowledgeable about specialty coffee as they were in Portland?
Hmm. So this is actually about 3 years ago. You're absolutely right. So when I got back to New York City, I was very ambitious. I want to introduce a lot of things that I saw in Portland to New York City. I want to do espresso flights. I want to tell people about single origin pour over. I want to tell people like if they could do flights, you can see the difference and just drink black coffee, no sugar, no milk, things like this. But I realized that it is still going to take me a little while to be able to tell people like coffee should be done this way. So we modify from there. When I think we have to first help the customer to build the confidence that coffee project could actually make good coffee, and then from there we can tell people how to do certain things. So if right now you look at coffee project, we do a lot of flights, we do a lot of innovative coffee drinks that I don't think so it will be as successful as now if I were to just launch it directly on the first day.
Right,
So
right.
it took me about few months time to tell people like, okay, coffee project, there's espresso based drinks, there's drip coffee, and we're very serious about coffee. And then slowly from there, we tell people how to do certain things. But espresso flight doesn't work when we first started, so I have to scrub it all the way out. Certain brewing method doesn't work, so I also have to scrub it all the way out. But if I were to reintroduce this method now, I think it's going to be a lot more adaptable.
Hmm. Now, one of the things
Mm.
when I went into your cafe, and you had wonderful espresso, wonderful cappuccino. I had a couple of drinks there, and a couple of
Mhm.
times I went. But one of the things you had that I thought was fascinating was a deconstructed latte, and then you explained to me
Mm.
why you had that and how you it was a way to actually educate people about going to new places or experimenting with new tastes in coffee. Tell us about the deconstructed latte and how that came about.
So with the deconstructed latte, I have to give credit to Slate Coffee Roaster in Seattle because that was when I
Hmm.
first had it. But when we get back to like get back to New York City to start sourcing beans and dairy for our shop, I did it the same way because certain coffee it's good on its own, but not as good, not as great when it adds milk to it. I need to find something that is good on its own, great with milk, and also good when it's a latte. So I did the exact same thing a lot of times with different beans and different dairy. And I came to a realization that if you do it this way, you can actually pick up the notes on the espresso a lot more when you drink the latte. So having said, when I bring it to the customer, the plank of flight, I can tell people where the coffee is from, how it's being processed, what are you going to taste, and how is the milk being frothed, what temperature, and then when you drink the latte, what can you pick up from there? So I realized the customer actually appreciate this information a lot, and they actually enjoy drinking their latte a lot more. And compared to just sit down and have a latte, they're more engaging in
Mm-hmm.
conversation. And we all, like all the baristas, including me, we are enjoying this relationship develop with people who come in and talk to us about coffee.
Mm-hmm. Some, how do you make sure that when somebody comes into your cafe and has a coffee, espresso, whatever they have, that every time they come, no matter who the barista is, they're going to have a good experience. That there's a consistency to what they receive because there's the roast, the roaster, but when it actually comes, the last step is the barista making the coffee drink and serving it. How do you guarantee consistency?
Mm. So baristas is very important when it comes to consistency. So what I can do to ensure this is I always make sure that all the stuff that we got in is I try all of them. We call it cupping, so I cup all of them before we even serve it to customer, and we have a standard that everyone has to follow. Like what is the weight of the espresso beans when ground? What is
Hmm.
the time? What's the temperature of the milk? So all these has a standard recipe that we all have to learn by heart. And there are times where humidity, the heat, and also the temperature would affect the grinds a little bit. So all the baristas are actually trained to pick up certain notes when we dial in to make sure that all these are there before we serve it. So it might take us a little while sometimes to make your coffee just because we want to make sure that it tastes as good as every time you come in, but it won't take us too much of your time. But we just
Hmm.
have to ensure that you get a good cup of coffee.
Right.
Yeah.
And then what beans do you use at your cafe?
Variety actually. So we have our home, the house espresso, which is a Brazil and Guatemala blend. We have our house drip, which is a Guatemala and a Nicaragua blend. And then we serve all different single origins from our gas roasters. So we've worked with multiple roasters from New York City itself, and we're looking at bringing more gas roasters. So we could all see the different roast style that the roasters bring to the cafe. So if I were to pick only one roaster to work with, sometimes it's just one roast style. So if we carry different and multiple roasters for single origin coffee, you could get a similar, let's say, an Ethiopian yoga chef coffee, but roasted by two different roaster. You can actually taste the
Hmm.
different profile and just they're both great. It's just one would maybe concentrate a little bit more on the floral notes of the coffee. The other might concentrate a little bit more of the chocolate notes of the coffee. So we all had a good time trying the same coffee with different roast style. And then Coffee Project is going to use it to brew with different methods. So it might be used on espresso where we make it with espresso machine, or it could be with pour over.
Hmm. And is there a specific roaster that you have really enjoyed working with over the years?
Um, um, Sorry, can you repeat the
Yeah,
question?
the roasting. Are you doing any roasting yourself, or are there roasters that you work with? And if so, those roasters that you work with, do you have some favorites?
Oh, I don't have a favorite. I love all of them, to be
Uh-huh.
honest. But I don't do roasting on my own.
Hmm.
I just have experience cupping with them and then
Hmm.
developing flavor profiles. But the two roasters that I'm currently working very closely with in New York City, it's Gotham Coffee Roaster
Hmm.
and also Unity Coffee
Right.
Sourcing. So
Right.
yeah, they have very different style, but they're both amazing. I've also worked with Sweet Leaf, also New York based.
Hmm.
And yeah, so we are in the middle of having a lot of samples from different roaster. In fact, the coming SCA Expo, we're also going to check out some new roaster in Roaster Village. Hopefully, we can bring more great coffee to Coffee Project.
Great. And then one area that you are also trained in is grading coffee beans. A lot of people listening in know how that's done. A lot of people don't. So if you could explain that to our listeners, what is
Oh,
involved in grading?
so we have a term for that. So I'm a licensed Q grader. So what we do is we grade green coffee. In my field, it's going to be Arabica green coffee.
Hmm.
So when we get a sample of the green coffee, we first have to like take a look at them and see if there's any foreign objects in the samples or if there's any defects, being like a black bean or a sour bean. So we differentiate it that way from the look and the color of it. We also cup it, where we actually brew it to a certain standard and we taste it, literally slurping it like how you would slurp wine
Hmm.
to figure out the taste of the coffee on its own when it's being sample roast. So sample roasting is one profile. So what we're getting is very calibrated with everyone else. Once we put down the marks, the scoring, and then we judge the acidity, judge the body, see if there's any characteristic, any defects, we would actually grade them above 80 points, and
Hmm.
that's when the coffee is actually certified specialty in the cupping form.
So to be certified specialty, it has to be above 80 or 85.
Yeah, above 80.
Okay.
Above 80 for the cupping form, and 85 and above is usually like really good coffee.
Hmm. What part of the business that you're in do you enjoy most?
I think for me, the one that I enjoy most is definitely brewing, like the barista part.
Hmm.
I love experimenting coffee bean brewing method, especially manual brewing, because I realized the different pouring style, different grind size, different temperature of water, if you stir your coffee or not, actually brings out a lot of different characteristic of the roasted beans. So this is one thing that I really enjoy doing, and I love talking to all the baristas friend that I met. Like maybe they found something that they did last week that I've not heard of, and it's giving them some insights that I picked up from there, and then maybe I would experiment it on my own, and then we share notes. So this is definitely the most enjoyable part of my end. The second part is definitely processing. It's I've never been to an origin till now, but I've done a lot of studies and see how coffee is being processed. It's so fascinating that there's so much work needs to be done to a coffee tree in order to make just one cup of coffee.
Right. So
Mm.
and I must say, when I went into your cafe, I found uh, the baristas, yourself included, to be very friendly. And if you had any questions, and I had several questions, people were very accommodating in answering them. Also, wanted to ask you about, you were in Portland, then in New York. Is the coffee culture very different between Portland and New York?
Very, very different.
Explain that. I'm
And
curious to hear. Yeah.
yeah, so I think the first thing that most of us who have been to both sides would realize is just the speed of the barista. So in Portland, everyone takes it easy, and there are actually a lot of coffee shops that I've gone through doesn't serve batch brew coffee like how
Hmm.
you would just batch brew
Right.
one whole gallon of coffee. Each coffee it's actually made per cup, like how Blue Bottle would do it.
Right.
But here in New York City, a lot of places would do batch brew, including Coffee Project. And I just realized it's just a trend. Like people will come in here and then just need a cup of coffee, grab and go. But we do see an increase in trend where people come in and ask like, "Oh, what are you brewing today?" So they they want to know what is in the pot instead of just, "Hey, can I get a drip coffee?" So
Right.
this is something that we see now, and people are starting to ask if you have any single origin coffee, and we are also serving more pour overs nowadays.
Right. And is Portland and New York similar in terms of how baristas and cafe owners from cafe to cafe interact with each other? Do you find it a supportive environment for a barista, and especially a barista cafe owner?
Mm, for this part, most of it, I think it's pretty similar in terms of Portland or New York City.
Hmm.
We're still very focused on the quality of the coffee that's being made. How is the barista doing? Are they trained, or how's the job environment? I think if we're still talking about the difference of both cities, um, the roast style is definitely one thing that I think we want to focus a little bit on.
Hmm.
because I do realize that the roasting on the West Coast is slightly lighter than what we have to offer in the East Coast.
Uh-huh. So slightly lighter.
So
Hmm.
slightly lighter.
Right.
We in the East Coast, I think we are also picking up a little bit, so we started to focus a little bit more on medium to medium light. But ultimately, I think we have to just see what is the best characteristic of the beans and how we will be able to bring the best out of the beans
Right.
itself.
Right. And if you were to go back to Malaysia to visit now, would you be able to find specialty coffee there?
Um, I'm sure there is a few that I can actually go and try, but specialty coffee has only bloomed really recently, like maybe the
Right.
last 2 years. Yeah, back home we all drink what we call the Hainanese coffee, which is mainly Robusta,
Right.
roasted really dark, and then we would add condensed milk or sugar in there, and that do it that way. But specialty coffee, it's slowly blooming. In my mind now, I might have a few that I can actually go back and try.
Great. And you'll be opening a second location, is that right? Where will that
That
be?
is correct.
Where will you put it?
This time it's gonna go to. This time it's gonna be in Brooklyn.
Hmm.
So it's you've been to Coffee Project. So
Yes.
the space in Brooklyn is gonna be a lot bigger, and we're happy to be able to put 3 coffee bars inside. We have our espresso bar, we have our pour over bar where we can put a lot more different brewing method in there, and we also have something called the steampunk bar. So this is something excited. I we were gonna work with Alpha Del Miche to bring in the steampunk so we can uh, use that concept to brew some
Explain
single
that to our
origin
listeners.
coffee.
Explain steampunk.
Steampunk, it's very much like a French press plus a siphon. So it has the vacuum side of it, but at the same time, there's the French press concept where you brew it, but it's all tablet operated. I will I will be able to dial in the recipe, and then any barista will be able to just follow the recipe, and we'll be able to check the total dissolved solubles in the coffee itself to see how much we can bring out of the coffee. So I think I'm really excited to work with that machine.
Great. And how will you divide your time between your two cafes?
The good thing is because all the baristas, including myself, we are very comfortable with how coffee projects being run right now. So I will be running both space for sure, but all of us are going to rotate and take shifts. You will still see me in first coffee project during certain days where we have to like do a lot of trainings and all that, but I will also spend some time in the second location. So it's just splitting up.
Right. And a practical question. Sometimes I know when people are thinking, "Hey, I'd like to open a cafe. I've been a barista for a while." How much working capital would you recommend they start with? Not the dollar amount, but do they need working capital
Mhm.
to get them through the first year, through the first 2 years? How long before a business generally gets standing on its own
I
feet?
think Yeah, I think to be on the safe side, have a working capital for at least 6 months. That being said, you have to get your rent covered,
Right.
your employees covered, and then have the flow to be able to invest in, let's say, beans, because beans is something that would go bad real quick if you don't manage it well. So on the safe side, at least 6 months.
At least 6 months. And any other advice you'd give to somebody that is thinking about opening a cafe?
I think be ready to work pull long shifts.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, long
Yeah.
hours. Be ready to drink a lot of coffee. Not so much on drinking it till you get so caffeinated, but you have to enjoy tasting different things because that's how you can source coffee for your coffee shop. But most
Right.
importantly, is just if you think this is the right thing you're doing, go with your gut feelings because
Right.
that's what I always do. When I want to do it, I know I have to do it. I might hear some opinions and voices from outside telling me, hey, this might not be right, da 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 da. But if you feel like it's the right thing to do, you just have to stay strong.
Great, great. And I think anybody going into the coffee business, especially on the cafe end of it, has to have a real passion for it. They have to love what they're doing. And I know you do from having been to your cafe and seeing how you work, that you are absolutely excited and passionate about what you're doing. And I would say in general, if you go to a cafe, no matter how nice it is or how nice the equipment is, if the barista, if the people running it don't look passionate about what they're doing, it's probably not going to be a great experience. But if they show that passion, that love of coffee, then the likelihood is it will be a very good experience for you. Would you agree?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Yeah, like a coffee shop that serves great coffee, if you're missing the barista or like someone friendly at the back or not, it's like missing the soul of it. Because
Right.
at the end of it, the person who makes coffee for you, you just like, unless it's, I don't know, like for me, I want to go to a coffee shop that I can like feel something. And like it's a whole package instead of
Right.
just a cup of coffee. So
Right.
I'm glad all of us in Coffee Projects on the same page. We don't have to force it out from us. Like it is not something that we pretend to be. So it is something natural that comes like we really want to greet you and treat you like a friend who is visiting our house and serve you a coffee that we make in house. So
Yep.
yeah.
It's a wonderful culture. Well, I would highly recommend the people out there listening when you're in New York City, take a trip to the East Village. It's a wonderful part of town, and go to 239 East Fifth Street and go to the Coffee Project. If you're in Brooklyn, go to the new place, but go to the one that's there now on East Fifth Street. It's a great part of town, great for walking, and you'll have a wonderful caffeinated experience there, I guarantee. And I mention that because, like
Thank
I
you.
said, I go to a lot of cafes and really good. I mean, I really enjoy it. And every once in a while, there's a place or two that jump out at me. And your place was one of those places. It had to do with the coffee, the atmosphere, you yourself, and your enthusiasm. And so I love to share that with other people. So great success. And where do you see this going in the next few years? Would you like to continue opening up new places?
Um, Sorry, I missed the last part.
Would you like to, you're opening up a new cafe in the next 4 or 5 years going forward. Do you see yourself having several cafes, or will you just stick with the two?
Oh. Um, for now, I think it will be the two, just because the past few years that I'm doing coffee, I've been getting a lot of people wanting to like, hey, can I clock in some shift? Or I would like to see if we could do something together in terms of pouring. So having a second location will allow more rooms for people to join us, and we can do some coffee things together. But I'm not going to say that we are not going to be bigger. More like if there's an opportunity and we see the right thing and have more people who are in the same page with us, we're definitely going to go for it.
Great. And then one final question, and that is, how did you come up with the name, the Coffee Project?
This is very interesting. So we wanted to do coffee project, called Coffee Project, because we want to do the shop as if we're doing a big project. That's one. So it is a coffee project for Kalina and myself. But at the same time, we're also doing a lot of different projects in the shop itself
Hmm.
to with coffee. So we have the Deconstructed Latte, we have our flights, we have all our innovative coffee drinks like the ginger elixir, where we did it from a black box challenge. So black box challenge is a seasonal barista competition that we do internally among
Hmm.
our baristas to see uh, who has something creative to offer. So it's very much like a black box from like MasterChef. So you get a black box with a fixed ingredient, and then everyone uses the same ingredient and whip something up, and then we all try it and judge it professionally. So ginger elixir was the first winner that we have on our board.
Great. Well, I wish you continued success. I'm actually, as we speak now, looking at a picture of me with you. I finally found it in your cafe, and it's wonderful. I have a big smile on my face because I was having a great time there. So, anyway, thank you, Sum, and love to have you back on the show sometime to talk about your new cafe. And in the meantime, have a great year and great success.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure sharing all of this with everyone.
Great, thank you.